The exercise files for today's course are located in the video description below. Don't forget to like and subscribe.
Welcome to the Power BI Intro to Data Analysis series. This is a 3-part series designed to help you get started with Power BI and develop your data analysis skills. Over the course of these 3 videos, we'll cover everything you need to know to begin transforming your data into actionable insights. In Part 1, Getting Started with Power BI, we'll explore the Power BI interface, learn how to connect to various data sources, and cover essential data transformations and cleaning techniques. Finally, we'll create a data model to set the foundation for your reports. In Part 2, Data Visualization and Reporting, we'll dive into data visualization. We'll learn how to create and customize various types of visuals, use advanced visualization techniques like slicers and filters, and design interactive reports that are both informative and engaging. In Part 3, Advanced Analysis and Sharing Insights, we'll tackle advanced analysis, we'll cover basics of DAX for advanced calculations, use of time intelligence functions to analyze data over time, and explore AI-driven insights and forecasting. Finally, we'll learn how to publish reports and share your insights with others. By the end of this series, you'll have a pretty good understanding of Power BI and the skills that you'll need to start analyzing data effectively. Let's go ahead and get started here.
Looking to support our channel and get a great deal? Become a member today to unlock ad-free videos. That's right, your favorite courses without a single ad. Interested in a specific video? Purchase one of our ad-free courses individually. Looking for even more? Gain access to exams, certificates, and exclusive content at LearnitAnytime.com. More information can be found in the video description below.
Welcome to the Power BI interface section. In this part, we'll explore the key components of Power BI Desktop's interface to help you navigate and use it effectively. Let's begin by looking at the Start screen here. When you open the Power BI Desktop, you'll see the Start screen. Here you can open recent files, start new reports, or get data from various sources. This is your launching point for all of your Power BI projects. I'll go into a blank report here. First, let's explore the report view. This is where you'll spend most of your time creating and editing your reports. The canvas in the center is where you'll add various visuals, such as bar charts, line charts, pie charts, to represent your data. On the right-hand side here, you currently have the Visualizations pane that's open. This allows you to choose and customize your visuals and the fields where you can drag and drop fields into your report. The report view is designed to be intuitive, making it easy to build and format your reports. Next, we have the table view. This view displays your data in tabular format, similar to a spreadsheet, that allows you to inspect your tables and columns in detail. You can perform basic transformations here, such as renaming columns or changing data types to ensure your data is clean and well-structured. Below, we have the model view. In this view, we'll manage the relationships between tables. Visualizing these relationships helps you understand how your tables connect and interact, which is crucial for accurate data analysis. You can create, modify, and delete relationships by dragging and dropping fields between tables. Last, we have the DAX query editor. From here, we can run and test queries and add them to our model. Now, let's talk the ribbon. The ribbon contains various tools and commands organized into tabs like Home, Inserting, Modeling, and View. The Home tab includes essential functions such as getting data, transforming data, and publishing your report. The Insert tab allows you to add different elements to your report, like visuals, text boxes, and images. The Modeling tab offers tools for managing relationships and creating calculations. The View tab lets you customize the appearance of your report workspace. And last, the Optimize tab here allows you to refresh, pause visuals, perform the analysis, and even apply all the slicers if need be. There also is a Help tab, which provides any documentation for the developers here, and guided videos and learning. On the right-hand side here, I have Fields, Pane. The Fields panes list all the tables and fields available in the data model. You can drag fields into the canvas to create visuals. The visualization panes allows me to select the visuals, and the filters pane here allows me to use this area to filter with any of the fields that I've added and imported. To recap, we've explored the report view, data view, the model view, the DAX query view, the ribbon, the fields pane, the visualizations pane, the data pane. In the next section, we'll dive into connecting various data sources, which is the first step in building your Power BI reports. Stay tuned. Let's start by exploring the different data sources you can connect to in Power BI. If you click on the Get Data button in the ribbon, you'll see a list of available data sources. You'll notice that Power BI supports a wide variety of data sources, including Excel workbooks, SQL Server, web data, and many others. For this tutorial, we'll focus on importing data from an Excel file. This Excel file can be found in the description of the video. Once we click on the Excel option and the Get Data menu, and we navigate and select the Excel file, we're going to end up seeing a preview of the data here. In this preview, I have the top showing me tables that are found inside the Excel workbook. And on the bottom here, I can see that I have worksheets, which are named the same as the tables, except the tables have a T in front. I can select the table to see a preview of them. It looks like we have a customer table. I can select the products table to see a preview of them. And I can select the sales table here, which if I look closely, I can see that there are some duplicate ID numbers in the sales ID. That is definitely something we're going to have to fix. I can go ahead and select these three tables and choose to load them in. Here in the data pane, I can see that the three tables have been loaded, and I now have access to the fields that are available within that Excel sheet to use in my Power BI report. Connecting to other data sources is just as easy. Now, if I head over to the table view, I can see a preview of these tables. And if I head over to the model view, I can see that Power BI has automatically detected the relationship between the tables. I can see it found a one and many relationship from customers in the customer table, the customer ID, and the customer ID in T sales. And it's probably done the same with the product IDs from T products and T sales. Once the data is loaded in, I can see here in my data pane, I have T customers, T products, and T sales. The next step is to start cleaning and transforming the data using the Power Query Editor. Now we can do that from the Home tab. If I hover up to the Home tab inside the ribbon, I can see that there's a command group called Queries. And from there, I have the option to select Transform Data. When I click on the drop-down, this allows me to use Power Query to connect, prepare, and transform the data. This will pull up a secondary window. This is my Power Query window. Now, in fact, if I look behind the Power Query window, I still have the Power BI desktop app right behind it. So let's spend some time talking about the Power Query window, because it's very similar to what we've just discovered in Power BI. We still have a ribbon. There's a different set of tabs this time, though. You have the Home tab, Transform, Add Column, View, Tools, and Help. I'm also noticing on the left-hand side, I can see there's a Queries window. It looks like this can be expanded and collapsed, so it can be made bigger and smaller. And on the right-hand side, I have the Query Settings pane, which also looks like it can be closed as well. I can see when I click on each of these tables, it's going to show me a preview of the data, and I have an option to change the data types if I need to. The top header row that shows the A, B, C, 1, 2, 3, these are the specific data types that we have in Power Query. It looks like it's auto-detected them for the tables that we brought in. How Power Query works, it's everything that we do to the data sets end up showing up as an applied step in the Query Settings window. Now I can already see here under the applied steps that I have a source, navigation, and change type. There are already 3 steps applied. And I can see that whenever I click on all 3 of the tables. Power Query will automatically detect the data source when you choose to transform the data. Now, it also automatically detects the data type. That's why it says change type here. So, what we can do with Power Query is we can modify these tables with the applied steps that we make. And once we hit close and apply, all of these applied steps will happen in our Power BI report. And we'll have access to any columns we've created, modified, and the data sets we've cleaned up. The Home tab has some pretty nice things in there. If you need to close and apply this from here, you can do that directly from Home. If you need to add in additional sources and use Power Query to clean and transform the data, you can bring in more sources. We are using an Excel workbook, but I know these are very common data sources that you can pull in. Keep in mind, under More, you'll see the full list. I can also refresh the query in case there's any changes made to it. That's usually for data sources that are more dynamic. And then I get a set of tools in the Home tab that are commonly used to clean and transform the data. Now, these applied steps are actually showing up as a script that's being created. So if I click on my Home tab here and I go to the Query command group, I would like to mention that there's something called the Advanced Editor. And what this does is it opens up the applied steps fully listed script here. And anytime I add in a new step, I'll see it show up in this script. It might be best to save a copy of this somewhere if you need it later. So what I want to do next here is if I go over to the Transform tab, I can see that there's a command group called Table. Some of these tools were found inside the Home tab. I have certain tools to group datasets, group rows in this table based on selected values in the column. Whether or not I want to use the first row as header to transpose, reverse rows, even count the rows that I have available. I have an any column command group that allows me to rename, detect data types, change the data types of the column that I have selected, fill the cell values of any empty neighboring cells. I can unpivot data if it's already been pivoted for me here. I can move around columns to different positions in the table. A lot of tools to transform the data in here. And then on the text column here, I have an option to split data based off special values. Very similar to text to columns in Excel. I can choose the data types, or character casing, I should say, for text. There's even trim and clean available there. I can extract certain lengths, characters, ranges from text of the selected column. I have a number column command group as well. I have statistical tools, standard math operation tools, and I have scientific operations. If I have a date and time column selected, I can see the date and time column options are available. And from here, I can also run scripts if I need to, like a R script or a Python script. You do need to have Python or R installed on your device in order to have these scripts work effectively. Under Add Columns, I have the option to choose columns from example, which is very similar to Flash Fill. I can create custom columns. I can use a custom function defined for each row of this table, or apply conditional formatting. If I need an index column, I can create one, whether it starts from 0 or 1, or a custom column. I can duplicate columns, and then I can see some text tools, number tools, date and time tools that we've seen before in the Transform tab are available. If I click on the View tab here, I can see there's an option for query settings in the formula bar. If you turn this off, you no longer will see the formula bar. Turn it back on, it will appear. If you turn off the query settings, you no longer will see that on the right-hand side either. Turn it on to appear. Then here on the data preview, you can have it show white space, display preview content using monospaced font. See how it changes the font? You can show the column distribution, 5 distinct, 3 unique. The column profile. Great tools to learn about your data. And then again, I can see the advanced editor from here if I need to. I can also choose to select a column from here. I can also just select them from the headers. And then from here, I can view a dependency tree of the queries. I can see they're all coming from one data source here. If I were to click on the Tools tab, I have Diagnose Steps. I can diagnose and go step by step in the query steps. I can start a diagnostic session, stop a diagnostic sessions, and then set up diagnostic session options. If I click on Help here, there's some guided learning, documentation, training videos, even a Power BI blog, community, samples that you can view. A nice little tour of our Power Query window. We'll be making some transformations next. One common cleaning task that we have to do with our data, I'm looking at the T sales here at Power Query, is you want to make sure that there's no duplicate values. Now, I kept the table small for our sample exercises, but as you can see here, I have some duplicate values based off the sales IDs. And if I click on this little table icon here, I can see that there's an option to remove duplicates. You'll also notice that inside the Home tab, you'll find that in the Home tab, under Reduce Rows, when you click on the drop-down, you also have Remove Duplicates. I also have other tools for removing rows, like removing the top rows. Select how many rows you want to remove from the top. Remove how many rows from the bottom. Or alternating rows. If you have to remove a repeated row every 50 lines or every 10 lines. I can also remove the blank rows, remove the error rows. I'm going to go ahead and remove the duplicates here. Now keep in mind, on the alternative side, I also have keep top rows, keep bottom rows, keep ranges of rows, keep duplicates as well. Kind of like the opposite of the remove rows options. I'm going to choose remove duplicates from here. Or here, it doesn't really matter. As you can see, some of these options are still there. And looks like it cleaned up the table there. I can see that under remove duplicates, or under my applied steps, I should say, there's a new step called remove duplicates. If I go over to my advanced editor as well, I can see they've added a new step called remove duplicates as well. While I'm on the T sales here, I also want to make sure that the total sales are in currency format here. Another thing I want to consider is filtering the data. I want to ignore any quantity sales that are less than 5 items, including the number 5. So I just want to keep the 10, 8, 7, and 6. So if it's less than 5, I have this option to number filter greater than. And as you can see, this data set has a filtered column. So if I were to hit close and apply in the Home tab, this data would come in without the filtered column now. If I go back over to my table view from Power Query, for Power BI, let's let the data load. I can see just the values that I brought in. I'm going to go back over to the Power Query window again. And if you don't need that step, you can always remove it. I'm going to go ahead and remove it now that we've seen that. I also have an option to replace values from the Home tab. I can look for a value and replace it with a specific one, although this data set doesn't require that, the T sales data set. If I go over to T products here, I can see the product ID, which is also found inside of T sales, occurs only once for each product. Looks like there's 4 different products we're selling, widget A, B, C, and D. And there's 2 different categories they can be in. And then here I'm going to set the price And I'm going to change the data type again to a fixed decimal number. It's saying that because this step was the last step that happened, I'm just going to replace the current step. And if I go over to T customers here, I can see the 3 columns that are available, and it looks like nothing needs to be changed here. All right, I think it's time to close and apply this, and let's take a look at the data model we've put together so far. Now, if I head over to the model view, I can see that we have the data sets already connected, the product ID and T products, (101), (102), (103), and (104), these 4 products, can all be found in the customer table, sometimes even duplicate occurrences of them. Product ID to product ID. Let me go ahead and see that there. I'm going to go back to the table view and go over to T sales. There's 101, 102, 103, 101 again, and then 104. They have the same products that are being sold in this table. So the relationship is that there's many occurrences of a product being sold, but there's only one occurrence of the price of the product and the product name and the category it belongs to. And the same thing with our customer information. You have customer ID in the customer table. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1004. Those customer IDs are found in the T sales table. 1001, 1002, 1003, 1001, 1004. So Power BI automatically will detect the data types for you, and it will automatically establish relationships of imported tables. So let me just go over to this File tab really quick, and I'm going to go down to the bottom where it says Options and Settings. And under the options here, there is this option that you might have to turn on if yours has not automatically detected the relationships. Under Data Load, I have an option to auto-detect new relationships after the data is loaded. And once you load that in, you can go ahead and hit OK. And now that I have the data loaded in and auto-detected, I can see that it's already connected them. But let's just say they weren't. I'm going to delete this. I'm going to get this one and delete this. You can grab the primary key from this column and connect them. When I let go of this, it will automatically detect the one side and the many side. See how I'm dropping customer ID to customer ID. From here to here. From product ID to product ID. Now, I want to go over to the report view, and I just really want to quickly show you something here, or better yet, I'll just go over to the table view to show it to you since it's a small table. There's only 5 dates, January 1st through 5th. This means we can't filter by date ranges. Well, there will be, but it's just going to be for the month of January in 2024. I think what's best, if you're going to work with dates, to put together a table that has the dates that span across the model. So this data model, it needs one more piece here where I want to get the dates and list them in this table. So that way I have the full year of dates in the model. And I might even extract like specific things from the date, like the month name, the year. So what I'm going to do is I need to add to this model here, this data model. I'm going to go over to the model view, and from the home tab here, I'm going to choose to create a new table. And for this table, I'm going to call it the calendar. And I'm going to set that equal to. There's a data analysis expression, a DAX expression, called calendar auto. Calendar auto returns a table with one column of dates calculated from the model automatically. So it's going to look at that column of dates that we have. It's going to realize it's from January 1st, 2024. Calendar auto is going to be a function that will create a list of calendars, dates, that span across the dates model. So I will see a full year for 2024 here with the calendar auto function. Let me go over to the table view so I can see the date table and see what column it just produced. From January 1st, 2024 to January 31st, 2024, 366 rows. Every single day of the year that spans across the model. Luckily, my model is just going to use these first 5. If I go back to the model view, though, this table that I have, this table that I just created, I think it's best. Let me go back to the table view one more time. I'm going to mark this one as the date table. The calendar, I'm going to mark it as the date table. To mark as a date table, to enable the creation of a date-related visual, tables, and quick measures using this table's date data. Mark it as a date table. Keep in mind any built-in date tables that are associated with this table will be removed. Visuals or DAX expressions referring to them may break. Luckily, we don't have anything yet. There's only one column we've created. Looks like it's validated that. I'll click Save. And I'm going to go back over to the model view here. I can see that it's acknowledged the fact that this column is my date. But I still think it's best to connect these dates with the dates in the sales so it knows to filter correctly. There'll be one occurrence of every date in the calendar, which potential there isn't, but potential multiple occurrences of a date in the T sales table. Date to date. One second here. I'm also noticing the data type. Or the date table here. I'm going to go ahead and set it to a short date. So it looks like we don't need to connect the date table with the date model because it already acknowledges the fact that they're connected and that this is the calendar table and that filtering will come across from here. Although if I didn't mark it as the date table, I would still have to connect it here. Let me go back over to my table view because now that I have this table created, I would like to add in a few extra columns that I can use in my model. I'm going to select New Column. Another DAX expression that I can use is the month function. This column I'll call month number, but I'll extract the month itself from the date table that I created. I have to give it the table name first, and then the column name I can select from the list with the tab key. I can see here, I can choose the data type. I'm going to go ahead and leave this as a whole number. This date column is date and time right now. I'm going to switch it to date as well. Cool. I'm going to add in a new column, and I'm going to call it month name. And I'm going to pass it the format function in DAX. And I want to format the calendar date specifically to a fully listed month name. And in the online DAX support reference guide, you'll know that there's 4 lowercase m's that will show the full date for DAX. I'm going to close out the format function here and hit enter. Now for sorting to work correctly, I'm going to get the month name, and I'm going to tell Power BI to use the month number column to sort this column. So January is equal to month, February is equal to 2. My final new column that I can add, I'm going to call it year. And I'm going to use the year function in DAX. And I'm going to pull the calendar date year portion. And now I have a full calendar table available for me. If I go back to my report view, I can see that the calendar is readily available for me in the list of tables that I have in my data model. This is found inside the data pane. To wrap up part 1 of our 3-part series, we've covered the Power BI interface, and we've learned about the key components. We've learned about connecting to various data sources and how to transform and clean data using the Power Query Editor. Last, we went over and created a data model, understood the relationships between the tables, created and managed additional relationships between the tables by putting together a calendar and marking it as the calendar. In our next video series, we'll be talking about data visualization and reporting. We'll do a quick recap of so far of what we have together. We'll do an introduction to data visualization, cover creating basic visuals to advanced visuals, to designing interactive reports. This will lead us into session 3, advanced analysis and sharing insights, which will do a quick recap of 2, learn about DAX calculations besides the date and time ones, do data insight and forecasting using AI features, and then wrap up our lesson plan by learning about the publishing and sharing options that we have available with Power BI. Welcome in, everybody. This is Power BI Intro to Data Analysis Part 2. We're going to be covering data visualization and reporting. My name is Faz Kareem, and I'm with Learnit. Before we dive into the material, though, I do want to mention that there is a Part 1 course. And if you haven't checked out the Power BI Getting Started course, I highly recommend to get that checked out before you dive into Part 2. We'll be continuing with the same file and data set from Part 1. A quick overview of what we covered in Part 1. You went over the interface. We connected to our Excel data source. This allowed us to bring in our products table, customer table, as well as sales table. We also created a table using DAX for our calendar. When the data got loaded in, we learned about the Power Query Editor from the Home tab of Power BI's desktop app. We learned about basic cleaning techniques like filtering, sorting, removing duplicates, replacing values. Once we had the data imported and cleaned up, we put together a data model by connecting data sets with their primary keys to establish relationships among the products, the sales, and the customer tables using their ID columns. And now here we are in Power BI Intro to Data Analysis Part 2, Data Visualization and Reporting. I'll also go into the file and explain all the data sets that we've loaded in. We'll do an introduction to data visualization, and we're going to talk about creating basic visuals, the formatting options for them, and how to customize your visuals if you need to. We'll also go into advanced filtering tools, like using slicers. If you need to, there's a marketplace for visuals. Visuals are the graphs, the charts, the filtering tools. And there's a whole marketplace on AppSource that you can access directly through Power BI to get it downloaded and installed and imported to your file. We'll play around with designing interactive reports by learning about bookmarking. If you need to, you can create a specific filter or a specific view of a page and then save that as a bookmark. You can then assign a button to the bookmark. This makes it a pretty interactive report if there's specific details you want to make sure that we can see at a high level as end users of your report. And then, of course, at the end, we'll do a quick overview of our key points. And then we'll do a preview of our next session, advanced analysis and sharing insights. Let's get started here. I'll be here in the Power BI desktop file. It's called Power Part 2 Start. And I'm going to go ahead and save this as Part 2 completed, so that way I'm not messing around with my original file. You'll have access to both inside the description. And just to refresh ourselves, in Part 1, we did do an overview of the desktop app. And we learned about specific views like the report view, the table view, the model view, the DAX Power Query view. We learned about the 3 different panes called filters, visualizations, data. We also spent time setting up the page so that grid lines are turned on, the visual snap to grid. If I go back over to the table view here, I can see some tables that have already been loaded into our data set or our Power BI report. We use DAX to create a table with the calendar auto function. And then we use a series of date and time functions, like the format function, the month number, month function, and then the year function as well. We also chose to sort the month name by the month number. Our customer table tracks all the customers with their customer IDs that connect to the sales table with the relationship. Our products table connects to the sales table with the product ID with the sales table relationship. And here I can see both product ID and customer ID. Now we did use Power Query to remove some duplicate values that showed up in our sales table. And if I go over to my model view here, I can see that the relationships have already been connected and I've already defined this as my calendar table. I have a customer ID on one side and customer ID on another side. I have the product ID on one side and the product ID on another side. So let's start building some visualizations on this page, now that we've done a quick recap of what we put together in Part 1. On the report page here, I'm going to toggle over to my visualizations pane and select a visual. Now it's from here you can go through your visual gallery and select what type of visual you want to create. And then you can add the appropriate fields that you want to show up in the visual. Now, as new users, you might want to know that you can also just select the fields that you want to see. And Power BI will do its best to create a visual that will show that. So maybe I want to see the products and their total sales that we've made. So let's see what we're selling here. I'm going to add in the product names. And I also am going to check mark total sales. Now I can see from here what it decided to do for me is it put together a table visual. This is a visual that we have that's a table. And right now what it's showing is the product names and the sum of total sales in the table. So let's just take an analysis here. Widget A. Widget A. Well, what's the product ID for widget A? Let me check that. Let me move it next to the product name. Widget A is 101. Here, I'll sort it by product IDs. 101, and that's 1,700 in sales. I'm going to deselect this. And I want to take a look at the sales here for widget A. And if I go over to the table view, I can see 101 was sold for 10 quantities for 1,000 on 1/1. I can see 101 is sold for 7 quantities at 700. If I go back to the report view, that 1,700 seems correct. Now, the table is a pretty basic visual in a sense that we've probably been exposed to it with other spreadsheet tools. Notice how I'm just moving it around freely on the page and it snaps to the grid that I've assigned. Of course, I can resize it, but as you can see here, I can resize the overall size of the visual, but the table remains the same. I want to mention that if you want to format your visuals, I have the ability to click on this format option. And if I need to, I can go through the visual settings and format things like the style preset. Right now, it's the default setting for the table, similar to Excel table styles. You can also set it to no table styling or minimal. So there's a lot of different table styles that we have access to. And depending on your needs, you can pick the one that you like. I'll go with condensed here. I can choose to keep the grid lines if I want. I can also choose a width for the grid lines. And update the color of the grid lines if I need to. I can also do the same thing for the vertical grid lines. Or turn them off entirely. I can add borders. I can see the blue lines are showing up around it. But of course, we can change the color of those lines if we need to. There was a point where this was Power BI's colors, although they've changed it to more of a green now. More of a green. That's too bright of a green, but we'll keep it. And of course, if I don't like any of these options, I can hit reset to default here for the grid. Goes back to the default. Under values here, check it out. I can choose the size of the font. Now we got to think about this. Legibility in PowerPoint starts sometimes at 28-point font. It's recommended for your titles and whatnot to be larger. So look, I'm upping this to about 28 here. Power BI can be connected to PowerPoint presentations if you needed to. It might make sense to make these things big enough to see in a PowerPoint presentation. Yeah. Here I can update the text color as well. The background color if I need to. I have alternating rows for the style. I'll keep it all black text. And I'll keep the alternating background color. Oh, not the same. That won't look good. I'll go back to white. Under column headers here, I can increase the size of the column headers. I should probably make that a little bit bigger. And just like the same, we have formatting options for alignment, background color, and text color, and wrapping options. If I go over to totals here, I'm going to update that to total sales. See how it updated that cell right there? Of course, if I didn't want to show the total, I can turn it off if I need to. I can also go into specific columns, change the settings for a specific column at a time. And then I can also do it for cell elements for specific cells as well. The font colors, the icons, the web URL. Now, every visual will have different setting options. These are mainly the visual formatting options. I also have general formatting options from here. Like the size here, of course I can adjust it manually if I need to. I can lock the aspect ratio, but of course I can adjust it manually from here if I need to. The title. Notice how it pops up right at the top there. We have formatting options for the title as well. Yeah, background colors, dividing options. I'm going to go ahead and remove the title though. I have effect options as well. Visual borders that I can add. Header icons, tooltips. And for accessibility reasons, I can add alternative text. So if there's a screen reader, it can describe what this data set is showing. So what I think would be best is try to see if you can create the table visual. See if you can add in the product, the total sales, and the product name columns. Now, if you need to rename them, you can do that from here as well. I can right-click the product ID, and I can rename it for the visual. I'm also going to select the total sales here from the data pane. You see I have it highlighted here. And I'm just going to mark it as currency formatting. See how that updated the values here in the table as well? I have the decimals fixed to auto, and I'll keep it as such. As you're creating your visual, I just want to mention that if you don't want to go line by line, searching for your editing options, there's a search box at the top. Like, let's say you needed to increase the font. There's even something called the global font size. Now, I'm going to choose to have my table sorted by the total sales here, with the total sales with the highest value on the top. These icons are sorting icons here. Go ahead and create your table visual. All right, I'm also going to deselect this visual now, and I'm going to go over to the Format Your Page option from the Visualizations pane. And under Page Information here, I'm going to give it a name, the table, visual, product sales. Now I'm going to click on another page here, and I'm going to rename this page Bar Chart. Because if I want, I can also select the visual that I want. I'll go ahead and select the bar chart here. And here I can see I have a y-axis, an x-axis, and a legend that I can fill out. So if I want to see the product names, I can check mark that. And their total sales. Check out how quick that was to create the visual. Now, if I want, I can add in a legend here. Maybe I want to break it up by category. So every visual has different formatting options. If I were to click on this icon here, the Format Your Visual icon, I have to have this selected to see that icon. I can see that this visual has different options. There's one for the y-axis. What happens if I turn this off? See my y-axis here? But if I increase the font size to it, turn it off, the product names go away. I can choose to concatenate the labels if I need to as well. I'll go ahead and bold out the product names as well. And here I can see the title there. I'll put some space in the name, product name. And I'll increase the font size to that a little bit. I can do the same exact options for my x-axis. The numbers on the bottom there. Although I like to turn it off, the x-axis values, and instead maybe turn on from the visuals. If you collapse that area, you can turn on data labels. And when I open this up, I can see even the data labels have options here. I can add a background color for the data label. I know that seems interesting, but this is what they mean here. See how there's a background color around the data labels. Just drawing more attention to it. My legend here as well that I've turned on, I've titled it category. Let me make the text size a little bit bigger there. And I want to go over to the general settings here for the title. I'll call it total sales by product. And I'll probably make that bigger too. Here, let me turn off the title for the x-axis there. I'm going to go to visuals, x-axis. Not range, not values, but title. Try to see if you can also create a bar chart visual on a new page. And spend some time just going through the formatting options, all that are available. Now keep in mind, if you click on this ellipses here on the visual, you have an option to show this as a table or export the data. When I export the data here, I can create a CSV file of the data. Isn't that cool? So this is an exported data set from Power BI here. It's a CSV file. If I click on this ellipses here, I can show it as a table. Spotlight it, although it's the only visual on the page. Spotlight it would make it stand out. And then here I can sort the axis by total sales or product names in sending or ascending order. Same with the legend as well. Based off, there's only one category based off descending or ascending order. So plenty of options. I even have a filter option, letting me know if there was any filters applied to this, I would see it. And we will be talking about slicers and timelines after we get through a couple of visuals that I want to showcase. So another visual that we can add is a line graph. Now inside of our visualizations pane, I can see that I have the line graph visual here. If I select it, I can relocate it across the page. And I want to see the quantity and the dates. I'm going to turn on data labels. Our sales data is only 1 week of January. Now, once you've added in the timeline here, we're going to get into pie charts next. And then we'll talk about filtering. So go ahead and add a line graph to a new page and play around some of the formatting options that we have available. The next visual I want to discuss is the pie chart. If I select the pie chart here and I put it on the map, or on the page, I should say, and let me go ahead and make this bigger for us. I'm going to go ahead and show the products. And I want to see the total sales of each product. This is a great example for a pie since there isn't too many ways to slice it. Now, of course, we have all these formatting options that are available. I'll go ahead and move it to the top, the legend. And of course, we have different formatting options for the visual if it's selected here. I can choose the different colors for the widgets if I need to. I can choose the detail labels and how they're going to show up, and the label contents. So I've added in this pie chart here, and I want to use this page. Let me update the page information. I'm going to deselect the visual, select the page, and I'm going to call this pie chart. Now I want to start talking about filtering, and I'll be using the pie chart to discuss filtering next. All right, the next visual I want to discuss is called a slicer. The slicer is going to help us visualize and filter the visual. So let me deselect everything and select the slicer visual here. And for the slicer, I'm going to add in a field to filter by called product name. This slicer allows me to select a specific product, and it filters the table, the visual, or pie chart. If I hold down the control key, it can select more than one option. Now, if I go over to these options to format the slicer, under the slicer settings, I have different options to show the slicer on the page, and one of them is the vertical list. That's what we're looking at here. This is a vertical list. These are the tiles. I can turn on multi-select. I can also turn on a show a select all option. I can update the slicer header. And since this is a text-based slicer, I can add in a search functionality to it as well. Filters things for me. Now, I'm going to move my pie chart to the side a little bit. If I have a numerical filter, I just want to show this like for quantities maybe. Quantities is numerical. I'm going to change that to a slicer. Numerical filters will have different options. Under slicer settings here, I have different options. And I also don't get the search functionality. In addition to this, I can also add in my own custom visuals from the app source. I can click on the ellipses from here to get more visuals. Or if I go to my Insert tab at the top, the option to get more visuals from app source is available. If I go to the Home tab, there's an Insert command group. The option to get more visuals is also available. Coming up next, I want to add in the timeline slicer visual. If I go over and add in the app source, I take a second to load a visual that I can search for that is rather useful as a timeline slicer. It is Power BI certified, and I'll go ahead and add that in. See how I have a new import created now? If I select that timeline slicer here, I can then filter by, I know I have a date field here somewhere. the dates. There's only one date, though, in January right now, so there isn't too much to filter by. I'll go to the days here, though. So we have our timelines, we have our numerical filter slicers, our text-based filter slicers. Spend some time adding some filtering tools to the page. And once you've added a couple of filtering tools, in the Insert tab, you have access to a command group called Elements. And from there, there's a Buttons drop-down, and you have an option to add a button to clear all of your slicers. So if I have something filtered and I hit Control-Click here, it clears all the slicers there for me. Oh, let me select all, though. Yeah. I went ahead and opened up the bar chart page, bar chart, where I created the total sales by product. And I'm just going to add in a slicer here. So that I can filter by regions, customer regions. I'm also going to add in another slicer for the product names. Or better yet, category names, since there's just 2 of them. Now, this report, I can filter by region, and I can see the category sales by region. So East region for category 1, 0 sales. East region for category 2, $800 in sales. Power BI allows me to go over to the Insert tab, and I can actually create buttons that will save some of my filtered results. I can bookmark some of them, is what I'm trying to get at. So if I go over to my View tab, there is a Show Panes option for bookmarks. Add a bookmark to save a filter, cross-highlighting, and drilling you've applied. And for the first one, I'm going to select the Add Bookmark option here, but I'm going to have the East and Category 1 selected. And I'm going to add a bookmark. And I'm going to rename this one the East Category 1. If I add another bookmark and I click on Category 2 and I choose to update this bookmark, I can rename this one to East Category 2. So I'm going to clear these filters here. And I'm just going to select this bookmark for Category 1. See how it just shows me Category 1s? I'm going to select this bookmark for Category 2. And since we're clearing the filters so much, I'm going to insert a button to clear all slicers. That way I can just click this every time I need to. So if I need to do the same thing for the North region, Category 1, add a bookmark, update, rename, North, I'll do C1. If I hit add again, click on Category 2, update, rename. If I click on South, click on Category 1, add, update, rename. If I click on Category 2, add, update, rename. I'm going to do the same thing for West now, finally, for category 1. Add, update, rename. Same thing for the last one here, category 2, add, update, and then rename. So I have created a bookmark here. Let's test them. Category 1, category 2 for East, North category 1, category 2, South category 1, category 2, South category, West category 1, West category 2. And what I can do here is I can insert these buttons that I can use. I'm going to insert a blank button here. For the action on the button that I just created, I can assign a bookmark. I'll assign my first one. It might be best to, add a title to it. If you are going to add a button, I'll go ahead and call this one East C1. So I just created one button as an example here. And when I select this button here, I've already assigned the action for East category 1. So if I were to click that, it assigns that button to it. And depending on what bookmark I assign to this button, maybe I want to do North category 1. If I click on it now, it switches to North category 1. So you can actually create your own filtering tools using buttons and bookmarks. That's one of the features to do so. Creates a pretty interactive report that you can share with others. Go ahead and give this a try. We've put together quite a few different visualizations in part 2, data visualization and reporting. Learn about filtering and slicing, as well as bookmarks and buttons. In this lesson plan, we started out with a quick recap of part 1, an introduction to data visualization, various pie charts, line charts, bar charts, how to format your visuals, using slicers and filters, and accessing the app source for custom visuals that you can add in, ultimately using bookmarks and selections to create interactive and user-friendly reports. We do have a part 3 coming up. You'll do advanced analysis, learning about DAX expressions that we can use. We'll understand time intelligence in Power BI, and we'll talk about some AI features that we have available before publishing over to Power BI service. Hello and welcome to Power BI Intro to Data Analysis Part 3. There's a Part 2 and Part 1 before this. Today's session's on advanced analysis as well as sharing insights. A recap of Part 2, in case you're wondering what we covered in Part 2. We went over creating basic visuals, things like the bar chart, line chart, pie chart were put together. We learned about the formatting options that we have available for all these visuals. Then we went into creating slicers, timelines, filtering, as well as the formatting options behind these visuals. We learned about App Source and how you can install and import custom visualizations for your report needs. And we also created bookmarks and selections to help us create interactive and user-friendly reports. Part 3 is going to do an introduction to DAX analysis expressions, data analysis expressions, DAX. We're going to do an introduction to DAX and learn about basic DAX functions as well as calculations. Understand time intelligence in Power BI. Use features for data insights. Basic forecasting techniques. Ultimately publish to Power BI service. And then we can see how we can share this data with others. And then we'll do a recap of the entire series. Let's get into DAX. I'm in our Power BI report file. And in this Power BI report file that we've gone through in Part 1 and Part 2, we have a couple of tables. One that we created called Calendar, a table that we imported called customer, which tracks the customer ID, the customer name, and the region. If I go to products here, I have product ID, product name, category, and price. If I click on T sales, I have the sales ID, date, product ID, customer ID, quantity, and total sales. Data analysis expressions are a powerful formula language, very similar to Excel functions, and it's used for Power BI data modeling. And we saw a little bit of it when we created our calendar table in part 1, but it allows you to create custom calculations and aggregations to gain deeper insight from your data. Now, today we're going to be exploring the essentials of DAX. We're going to be learning about things called measures, which are single cell calculations that you can do that avoid a row context filter. And we'll also learn about creating calculated columns. We've already spent some time creating a calculated table with the calendar one from part 1. I use the calendar auto function in DAX to return the table. And then I use the format function as well as the month function, format, and the year function. So we'll be seeing more DAX functions that we'll use to aggregate, create custom calculations within our data set. Let's get started. I'm in the table view in Power BI, and I'm also looking at the table sales from the data pane. And one of the functions that I want to start with DAX is called the SUM function. What this does is it's going to help me calculate the sum of a column. Like, for example, if I want to sum up the total quantity sold, I have this DAX formula to help me. I'm going to create a new measure here in DAX. Be sure to be in the correct table where you want your measure to be located, although you can move it later. I'm going to select the new measure option. Write a DAX expression that calculates a value from your data. So this formula bar at the top allows me to name the DAX expression. If it's a measure, I like to start it with for my measures. Underscore, I'll call it total, underscore quantity. And I'll set that equal to the DAX function sum. Now you can use your drop-down arrows to select items from this list, but if you click on the tab key, it will auto-select it for you. The sum function is going to require a column name, but you have to tell it what table you want to pull from. So here it's listing all the different columns from all the different tables, starting with calendar to T customers to T products. And then there I go over to T sales. If I select the tab key here, if I close the parenthesis here, I'm going to hit enter and I've just created my first measure in the sales table here. I can see my measures available there. Notice how it's not showing up in the table, in the column here, but I could use this. I could use this in a visual now. We'll see that on a new page in just a second. Now there is some best practices for your measures. Naming them in alphabetical order with is extremely helpful. I want to mention that if you go over to the modeling view and you select your measure, see how I selected it? I can enter in a display folder name to create a folder to hold all my measures at the top of the table in the data pane. So I'm going to call this one measures. And just so it shows up at the very top of the data pane, I'm going to put AAA measures. And when I hit enter here, it's going to move that measure I have selected to the AAA measures here. So that's my first measure I just created. Let me go over to my report view now, and I'll add in a new page to the end of the Power BI report file. I'm going to add in a table here. I'm going to add in some of the sales information, like the product ID and the quantities, maybe even the product names. I'll put the product name in front of the product IDs. But now if I add this measure, I can use a measure to track the total quantity. This ensures it avoids row context filtering. Now, to give more flexibility with the data set, I recommend to use your measures in the columns instead of the field itself. I'm going to remove the sum of quantity there. Now I have my quantity measure. I can also use another visual called the card visual to display my measures on the report page. Let's talk about the SUMX function next. Next, we're going to use the SUMX function. This is going to calculate the sum of an expression evaluated for each row in a table. This is useful when we need to perform a row-by-row calculation before summing. For instance, if we needed to calculate the total sales amount, we can get the quantity and the total sales and multiply them. If I go over to the Home tab and I create a new measure, I'll call this one total sales amount. And I'll use the SUMX function. Returns a sum of an expression evaluated for each row in a table. And the table I want to give it is going to be the T sales table. And the expression that I want to do row by row is I want to get the sales table quantity and multiply it by the sales. Total sales. If I close this parenthesis here, I'll have a new measure calculating the total sales amount multiplying the quantity in the total sales. And of course, I can just drag and drop my new measure to the folder. Wait, is it going to let me? I may stand corrected there. Oh, 1 second there. Let me do it for the model view. Oh, huh. Could have sworn an update allowed me to do that where I can drag and drop it. I'm going to still get this and I'm going to move it to the folder. Measures. If I go over to my report view and I add in the total sales amount measure, which multiplies the quantity in the sales, so it's going to be much larger. I can see that each row is showing me the correct value for the quantity sold. Now, I just want to mention, if you name your measures like this, you can always rename the measure from the field list over here. I can rename it for the visual and I can call it total quantity. I can rename it for the visual from here. I'm going to call it total sales amount. And if I need to, I can reorder the order of the columns. Now I'm going to go over to the formatting option for the visual, and I'm going to just search for font, and I'm going to increase the font size to that. Got a nice big table we can read. And I'm also just going to add in a card. For the total sales amount now. So go ahead and give this a try. Try putting together a new measure. I'm going to select this measure. This is the formula for it. This is automatically set to currency because I'm using currency values in the measure, so the data type gets assigned to it. The average function's coming up next. To find the average of the quantity of products sold, I can use this formula here. I'm going to select a new measure. I'll call it MM for my measure. I'll call it average, AVG, quantity is equal to. I'll pass the average function. I'll pass the T sales table, quantity column. Close the parenthesis. Once I create the measure and I select it here, I can go over to the model view and add the display folder name I want to move it to. AAA measures. Go back to my report page view and I'm going to select a card. And I'll go ahead and add that new measure I just added in. Looks like the average quantity is 8.5. I can also add that measure to the table if I needed to as well. So, I'm sure now we're wondering, how am I ever going to learn all of these DAX functions? Not to be alarmed, there is an online reference guide here that's available for us to use. And the DAX reference guide is absolutely free to download if you need to. And it goes through various functions that you have. We're using aggregation functions right now. Like what we went through was the average function. And look, there is a full definition, return values, remarks, different examples that we have. So be sure to check out these support pages for specific functions that you need help and guidance with. They're actually all here so far, the ones that we've covered. There's my sum and my SUMX as well. All very similar formats. So these are the DAX support pages that you can find online. Here, the SUMX function. This one goes row by row for the table. So you give it a table and the expression that you want to do for each row. Oh, this one has a more advanced example with a filter, where the sales territory ID is equal to 5. They're going to sum up the freight. So when in doubt, you don't have to memorize all the syntax and all of the DAX functions. I believe there's a little bit over 250 of them that are available. But when it comes time to, it's helpful to know that you can search through them to figure out what function you need to use, ultimately giving you more flexibility in the report needs that you're trying to create and showcase on the report page. So the average function is what we just covered here. And then I moved it over to the folder. And this is a measure that I have available that I can use across my report now. Go ahead and give this a try. The formula's on the screen. When we come back, we're going to learn about a pretty cool function called calculate, which helps you modify the filter context of a calculation. The next function I want to cover is called calculate. Calculate is one of the most powerful DAX functions. It allows you to modify a filter context of a calculation. For example, we can calculate the total sales for a specific product, like product 101. The calculate function evaluates an expression in a modified filter context. So it's going to ask for an expression that you're going to give it, and then a filter and an optional additional filter if you need it. Let's see some examples. So it needs a Boolean expression. A Boolean expression filter is an expression that evaluates to true or false. There are several rules they must abide by. They can reference columns from a single table. They cannot reference measures. They cannot use a nested calculated function. Beginning September of 2021, they cannot use functions that scan or return a table unless they are passed as an argument to aggregate functions. They can contain an aggregate function that returns a scalar value. The total sales on the last date selected. Notice how this is using the sum function on the sales amount. It's filtering for the sales date order key, the max order date key. The table expression filter applies to the table object as a filter. You can use the filter function to apply complex filtering conditions, including those that cannot be defined by a Boolean filter. Let's see if there's an example here. The following sales table measure definition produces a revenue result, but only for the products that have a blue color. So this is the blue revenue calculate function. It's using calculate. It's summing the sales amount, but the filter here is looking in the product color and making sure that it's equal to blue. And here's our blue revenue for accessories, bikes, clothing, components, totals. The calculate function evaluates the sum of the sales table sales amount column in a modified filter context. The new filter is added to the product table for color column. The filter overwrites any filter that's already applied in the column. The revenue percent total channel. This is removing the filters from channel. So let's see the calculate function in action. I'm going to create a new measure, and let's just call it total sales for product 101. And I'll set that equal to the calculate function. If I hit Shift Enter, it goes to a new line. I'm going to pass the sum function as my expression, and I'm going to use the T sales table, total sales column. And the filter here that I'm going to add in, let me close the parenthesis. The filter here, I'm only going to do one filter. It's going to be the T sales. Product ID is equal to 101. Close the parenthesis. I'll probably put this one on a new line. I'll hit Shift Enter as well. Expression and the filter. If I go back over to my report view, I'm going to add in, well, let me move it over from the model view. Let's follow our best practices. I'm going to move this into the folder correctly. AAA measures. I can see that there's only sales for product 101. Product ID 101, 1700. Everything else is blank. It ignores all other filtering context. I'm going to add in a card for this one as well. So this could easily be updated, right? This measure here. Easily be updated to maybe do 102, 103, 104, and you can have a filter for each product total sales. I'm going to go back over to the table view. I'm going to copy this formula, control copy, create a new measure, paste it in. This one I'll do it for product 102. I'll update the name, update the filter, create the measure. If I go over to the model view, I can move it over to the appropriate display folder. Now it's 500 for product 102. I'll go ahead and add in a card here. I'm running out of space, so I'll go down. And if I need to keep doing that for each product, how many products do I have total? 2 more. I can add in a new measure. Paste the result, just change it to 103 for the title. Change it to 103 for the filter. Commit the change. Just got to move over to the model view. Move it over to the measures folder. I'll add that in. If I select the card again, product 103. And the final one, new measure. 104. Gonna go over to my model view. Put it into the correct display folder. And just like we've been doing, just to showcase the result, I'll update it to the table. And then I'll add in my card or my measure as well. When we come back, we'll play around with the filter function in Power BI. Another useful function that we should discuss is called the filter function. The filter function returns a table that's a subset of another table or expression. Maybe I want to return a table of the filtered sales transactions where the total sales amount is above 700. So I'm going to create a new table this time. And it says table is equal to, I'm going to call it sales. I'll do T underscore sales above 700. Table sales above 700. And I'll pass the filter function to it. The table that I want to filter is the sales table. The filter expression is I want to check the table sales. The total sales greater than 700. When I hit enter here, check out the result that I have now, this new table that I've added in. Check this out. Now I have a new table that I've added in. Of course, I would probably connect it from product ID to product ID as well. So, if I want to showcase this table, I'm going to add in another table here at the top. I have a table now that I can use. that just shows sales above 700. How cool is that? How quick was that to make? A single formula produced a whole new visual that I can showcase. So if I go over to these support pages here, I can always read about the filter function, a Boolean expression. You can use the filter function to reduce a number of rows in a table that you are working with. It's usually used as a function that's embedded into an argument. Avoid using filter as the filter argument. Use count rows instead of count index. And we have various examples for the filter function here if we need it. Go ahead and try out the filter function. And we're going to go into the related table function next. Here's the function on the screen here for us. This was a new table DAX expression, not a new measure DAX expression. One does a single value calculation, one returns a table of calculations. Huge difference between the two, and your functions that return tables will not work if you select new measure. Vice versa as well, your functions that return a new measure will not work for new table. So be sure that you click the appropriate one. We've learned about creating new measures. We've learned about creating new tables. I want to talk about creating calculated columns. So I have the T sales table here selected. And I want to create a new calculated column for the table. There is a relationship function called related. It returns a related value from another table. So any table that has a relationship with the sales table, it can pull that column into the sales table. So like what if we wanted to add the product names? Based off the product IDs, I want to add the product names of each product that we sold to the sales table. If I create a new column here, this really matters that you're in the correct table when you do this, right? Because I have to add it to T sales. There is a function in DAX called related. It just needs a column. The column that contains the values you want to retrieve. I want the product names. The related function requires that a relationship exists between the current table and the table with related information. You specify the column that contains the data that you want, and the function follows an existing many-to-one relationship to fetch the values from the specified column in the related table. If a relationship does not exist, you must create a relationship. When the related function performs a lookup, it examines all the values in the specified table, regardless of any filters that may have been applied. The related function needs a row context, therefore it can only be used in a calculated column and expression, where the current row context is unambiguous, whereas nested functions in an expression that uses a table scanning function, such as SUMX gets the value from the current row and then scans another table or instance of that value. So if I want to pull in the related product name, I can set that equal to the related function. And as long as there is a relationship between the sales table and that table, which I do, sales and products have a relationship using product ID, I can pull over the columns. So I'm going to go over to T products at the bottom there. And I'm going to bring in the product name. I can do this as well for the categories. I can bring over anything I need from products. Price, product ID, product name, new column. I can add a new column to bring in the price of each product. I'll probably multiply this one in another column with the quantity if I need to. Go ahead and give the related function a try on your T sales table and create the related by product name, related by category name, and price of product column using the related function. A DAX function that might be useful to use is called the if function. I'm sure many of us have used the if function in other programming languages, or maybe even Microsoft Excel, where a logical test, a value if true, and a value if false are defined, and the logical test will trigger something true or something false in the results of a cell. The if function has made its way over to DAX, and if I create a new column in the sales table, I can check for a high sales flag. I want to mark anything that's greater than 700 with the high sale flag, everything else with the low sale flag. So the if function I can use to pass the sales table sales amounts, the total sales here. If it's greater than 700, I want to label that in quotes with the word high. If not, I'm going to label that in quotes with the word low. Those quotes are required for each of the arguments. And when I close out the if function parenthesis, I will see that new column for the high sales flag being created. Now I do want to go into a date and time function called date add coming up next. Go ahead and practice the if function and add the high sales flag to the sales table using a new column, calculated column. The last function I want to get in is date add. The date add function returns a table that creates a column of dates shifted by a specified number of intervals. So I'm going to go over and I'm going to create from the Home tab a new measure here. And I'm going to call it sales last month. And I can use the calculate function for this. And I can use the expression from the sum of the sales of the total sales. And then I can use the date add. I can pass this table sales dates. The number of intervals, I'll do -1 month. And the interval I'll do is a month. So that's my filter there. See how I'm using the date add there? My date add. I'm actually nesting it with the calculate function for this example. And let me put MM, since this is a measure, measure, sales last month. And I'm probably going to move that over to the measures table. And let's go over to the report view. I'm going to add in a card. And let's see, should be 0, I believe. Yeah, because this is all January sales. Empty. So go ahead and try that out for our final function in DAX that we've covered, the date add, nesting in a calculate, nesting in a sum. Look at that at the very end. 3 functions are nested in there. By covering DAX functions, we'll understand like this nice comprehensive overview of the power of these abilities in Power BI reports. From basic to advanced, DAX functions are available for your use cases. Now that we've put together some DAX functions, some visualizations on our pages, in order to share this content with others in your organization, you actually have to publish this. And from the Home tab, if you select Publish, this is going to send it over to the Power BI service. Everyone should have access to a workspace called My Workspace that they can publish to. I'm going to save it to My Workspace. From here, I can share the semantic model I created, as well as the various report pages that I have. It's publishing it over to the Power BI service directly from here. And when I click on this link, it will prompt me on my browser and take me over to the service to where I can see my report online and share it with others. From here, I have the option to share within my organization, export, or even select file and embed this report to a public area, a public link. Keep in mind, under My Workspaces, you will have this opportunity if I need to, I can set up a refresh cycle. So if the data changes, I can automatically refresh it up to 8 times a day. Or I can just do a manual refresh of the data set. So the Power BI service allows you to set up this refresh cycle. You may need to set up a gateway for this to work, and you have to download the gateway from this page. You're probably going to use a personal gateway if it's on your local device. This way it can connect to your local files and actually set up a refresh cycle once you give it your credentials and allow it to log in for you. And once you get signed into your credentials, I don't want it to pop it up on the screen, the option to refresh will be available here. Up to 8 times a day. Keep in mind that once this report's shared, at the bottom here, I call it part 3. Once this report is shared, everyone will get live updates if you set up the refresh cycle for it. All right, we went ahead and completed the Power BI Intro to Data Analysis 3-part series. This session was advanced analysis and sharing insights. We've gone through advanced calculations, measures, tables, date and time functions, insight features, as well as publishing options.